To the agenda?
No.
All right, moving on, acceptance of the minutes, June 14th, 2023.
I'll move to accept the minutes of the meeting of the Westminster Selectboard for Wednesday, June 28th.
14th.
Excuse me, Wednesday, June 14th.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the minutes of June 14th, 2023 as presented. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Who wants to sign for the minutes? Because Dan is not here.
You can.
Okay,
You need a pen?
I got one.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, communications and public comments.
You're up. You're up.
Debbie, please
Yeah,
introduce yourself.
I am Christopher Morris. I'm a resident of Westminster. At the end, my wife and I own the White House at the very end of School Street, towards the Manhattan side. And we bought the place back in 2017. And ever since we moved in, really, we've been dealing with a lot of excessively dangerous speeds of vehicles going up and down the street. I myself have almost been clipped twice while mowing my front lawn. There's already been one dog that's been hit, I believe, and killed. And from what I understand, the speed limit is a gentle 25 miles an hour from Route 5 to Manhattan. But these vehicles sometimes, I'm sure they're going to go 60 miles an hour. My wife witnessed one time 2 vehicles drag racing down this road. We've reached out to local law enforcement, but they only dumped the portable radar thing. Sometimes the sheriff will sit in plain view of traffic, and they see him and they just slow down. But as soon as he leaves, there's nothing there to deter any future speed. So it's really frustrating from a safety perspective. There's kids, there's animals, there's people walking up and down the street all the time. Not only that, there's a school. So we're a bit perplexed as to why things haven't been addressed. I don't know if this has been an ongoing issue up and down School Street. I mean, I've been communicating with Allie about the issue. I know she's been in touch with
Numerous emails to the sheriffs. They did do a radar sign for us, but didn't do much of a presence. But it was towards the end of the year. I mean, but it's still a school. And Christopher has been, I have numerous emails. And Chuck had, I had asked Chuck about it, and he said, you're gonna get the street painted, is that correct?
So we put up new signs,
Yeah.
regular yellow ones were, the school signs, the crossing signs were old and they need to be replaced. We replaced those. I've contracted Dolls Falls, when they do their painting, they're gonna paint school zone on the street there and in Westminster West. But they won't do that until closer to the fall. But of course, that, I don't feel like it's gonna slow down traffic. It's just gonna.
I tend to agree. I mean, are there alternative options that could be possibly discussed or looked into? Like, I was, referencing maybe putting 2 permanent radar signs in either directions that flash and tell you your speed, even installing speed tables or speed bumps, something that would.
You can't do speed bumps because you gotta plow the road, right? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Speed tables would be more gentle.
Yeah.
The high school has them in their driveway.
Right, it's a private driveway, it's a little different. I'm not even sure legally you can do that in the middle of a town road. The parking lot's a little different. I'd have to look into that to see if that's.
I think some of this comes back to the previous discussion at the last meeting about the sheriff's department.
Right,
We're not patrolling where
right.
we ask them or request them to patrol.
Yeah, there's
And
definitely.
we were at that period where we were out of a contract, but not quite into a new one, so maybe, but that,
It
Yeah,
is
I mean,
an
I
ongoing
remember,
issue.
I remember speaking to one of the sheriffs when they were pulled over and thanking him for sitting there, but, you know, I said, you know, is there a way you can hide, like sit in the school parking lot and hide? And apparently, he was saying that in order to do that, they would need to invest in one of the radar guns that would shoot perpendicular, and that's apparently out of their budget. They said it was like $20,000 for a gun. But, I mean, it's just, it's not a deterrent when you can see the police officer sitting on the side of the road.
Right.
You know, and as soon as he leaves, it just returns to normal. People need to know that there's a potential of getting ticketed, you know, if they're not doing a speed limit, you know? And again, it comes back to safety, you know, it's like, you know, mowing my lawn out in front, you know, when I'm pushing the lawnmower and I go to back up and turn around, there's a car going 60 miles an hour right behind me, you know? And it's just, it's scary. So,
We are,
just, you know, I'm just imploring the community to just try to find some resolution to.
we are going to have more discussions with the sheriff, so we'll make sure that it's a specific topic, so that we have a plan or ideas on how to address the speed. In more than just School Street, but.
Right. Is putting like a school zone sign, like, you know, they're blinking, you know, when flashing, or, you know, 15 miles an hour when flashing, or,
I don't know what the laws are about
I mean, it would
flashing
be when school's in session, obviously.
signs.
Right, according to, state law, you're not supposed to have any flashing. Even the speed, signs that have a blue flashing light, you know, those are illegal.
Oh, they're all over the road.
Yep.
so we could have, I think what he means, I think what he means is like what's at the middle school on School Street, like it's a yellow light that flashes during 7
During
to
7 to
9 and then 3 to 4, so.
Yeah, I guess I would have to call the state on that. I just know that before we talked about speed limit signs, they said to me that, the ones that have messages,
Right.
slow down.
Yeah.
Going to Saxon River, if somebody hits the bridge and says, oh my God, I'm flying about the sign, they're liable. Good Lord. I don't think, my honest opinion is until you get people in their wallet,
Yeah.
you can spend all the money on signs, stripes, bumps, whatever you want. Until people start spending money, they're not gonna slow down.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'm
Just
sorry.
gonna try to catch air off the bumps. You know?
Yeah,
Just for you to be aware, of course, at town meeting, there was a long discussion about policing, that we had a contract for $60,000. A lot of sentiment that wasn't providing us enough service, that was with the sheriff's department, or the sheriff's department wasn't able to provide the service that we wanted. The town upped that to $120,000, and we are, as a board, trying to figure out how to spend that money in what the town would like to have done. And of course, the town has interests in both patrol and speed reduction, as well as in response to crime. So there's two things. It isn't enough money to actually build our own police department, but we've considered that. So we're very much in the midst of it, and your comments are very well taken. The straightforward thing is to approach our contract with the sheriff's department with this additional funding and ask them if they will do specific things, which of course that would be one of them. But we are waiting to have more conversation with the sheriff's department and more consultation about what other alternatives do we have, but very, very much in the middle of a project. So, and School Street is certainly been a very common focus of attention. But it is also true that it probably won't come to a solution next week.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean,
It'll be more like, hopefully by fall.
yeah, I would just appreciate any kind of, not that you haven't had serious discussion about it. I mean, you know, it's, in my view or in my opinion, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when somebody gets hit. You know, and that's just, you know, to have somebody be hit by a speeding vehicle. I mean, that's just the worst possible scenario, you know. Be it me mowing my lawn, be it one of the 3 boys that lives across the street from me that happens to ride his bike out into the street. You know, be it somebody else's dog, be it our dog, you know, we had 2 golden retrievers. It's just a horrific scenario that I certainly don't, and I'm sure nobody here would certainly want to see come to fruition. So, I mean, I appreciate it, and if I may, I've got twofold. Can I bring up another?
It's communication, public comment.
Concerning the noise ordinances,
Do we actually have a noise ordinance?
yes,
Okay.
70 decibels, I believe, from the point of source of, you know, the property lines of. Another thing, in conjunction with School Street itself and sheriffs and, you know, state police, as well as, I don't know if we have a fish and wildlife around here. There's a lot of unlicensed dirt bikes and recreational vehicles running up and down the street at all hours of the night and day through the woods, which wakes my wife up, who's an ER nurse, who drives an hour up north to Dartmouth Hitchcock and comes back late at night, has to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and she's been woken up by these things. And, you know, I know when reading the ordinance, it's about, you know, quality of life, peace and quiet in the neighborhood, health, you know. It's just a lot of these things are, they're weighing. I don't want to be the old man in the street shaking his fist, you know, but at the same time, it's.
Please do, and I'll be not the only one.
Yeah, you know.
Currently, I'm the old guy trying to send soup back in the deli.
You know, I don't want to make enemies in the town. I don't want to, you know, piss people off, pardon for the expression. You know, I mean, dirt bikes and those, whatever they're called, whatever the ORVs are called, I don't know. Up and down the street, through the woods.
Are you talking about on the public street, or are you talking about in the woods? Or are you talking about private land or public land?
I mean, it's both. They go through the woods, from the field, through the woods, and then out onto the street and race up and down. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's, you know, private land back there, but, you know, which gets into whatever, but I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know if we can do anything about the private, I mean, can't do anything about the private land.
But I mean, running at like 1 o'clock
Depending
in
on
the
how the
morning.
noise ordinance is written.
Again, this is gonna come into the sheriff's stuff too, right?
Correct.
He's right about speed.
Of course, to some degree, there are vehicles that you can drive on private land that you can't drive on a public road.
Right.
And so that'd be one issue. The other issue would be noise, and again, how far away is this? I would just be very specific about complaints. Write them down, record them, and if then that would be something that could be, action could be taken on. I mean, one can even record noises on a cell phone-like device to be.
Yeah, we've recorded, sorry to interrupt, we've
Yeah.
recorded a couple instances where dirt bikes have raced up and down the road.
Yeah. But be very, very specific.
Yeah.
And so a ordinance can respond to some specific complaint. Is it specific to a non-licensed vehicle driving on the main road, or is it specific to allow noise coming off from a neighboring property? Record the noise, volume recorded, and record the dates and all that, so that some action could be taken about it.
If you know who it is.
just to determine that it isn't. And then there's always a possibility that if you know who it is, and they're a budding landowner, you talk to them.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best solution.
Right.
If that's a feasible solution.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, I really do. I think the big thing is safety along the street, you know, so.
Would you, when we are in discussions with sheriff again at a future meeting, would you like to be made aware?
I would love to be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be honored, yeah, so.
Please be aware that there's public comments where you can make public comments, and then if we're having a discussion with the sheriff, that would be sort of with us, with the sheriff, right? So that we get business done.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
Appreciate the work you guys do.
I'll be in touch with you when that comes up again.
Perfect, thank you. Lou, good to see you.
Yeah, good seeing you.
All right, thanks, folks.
Any other communications and public comments? Moving on, year-to-date financials. Take it away, Chip.
The treasury is in good stead. The general fund's in a problem.
That's not new.
That's not new, okay. On a side note, we sent out, I asked Kelly to send out delinquent notices. This is the first delinquent notice mailed out of here since February, I think. And that was because I was looking at the delinquency for the current year only, the year about to end, and we were above $350,000 in principal. So a lot of people missed payment too, or added interest, added penalty. They just never got a notice. So as of today, since we sent those notices, we've collected another $10,000. But they basically got the notice 7 days ago. So I was hoping, you know, everybody whipped out their wallets and paid by year end, because that would help our current year deficit that we're running in the general fund. But I just wanted you to be aware of that. I'm gonna start with, and I don't know what report you have in front of you to begin with, but I'm gonna start with the balance sheets. There are 12, 15 different balance sheets that you've got. And so that's a stack that's as big as this. First one is the general fund. The only account that I want to bring to your attention is on the bottom. It says fund balance current year. And that number is negative $81,372.84. Negative, meaning deficit, meaning not good. However, a couple lines above that said we started the year with 168,000. So we burned through half of it. With the events that have happened in the last year, hey, we're lucky, we even had the 168 to start with. So even though that we're at a loss, at the end right now, if we said everything is done, we still have 87,000 in fund balance available. Okay, so it looks bad, but when you combine it with all the past for this fund, you still have surplus at the end. You don't have to make it up next year. You have surplus already. The next one's highway. Please don't tell Chuck that he's flush with money. Next.
No.
The next one.
Only due to recent events.
Well, we'll see. As long as those bills come in after July 1st, we're good. Contingency reserve. I want to talk a minute about this fund. This is the fund that had $150,000 in it. That a couple years ago, the board and the public both voted to transfer this contingency fund over into FEMA to cover the expenses of the storm. And we are at the end of that FEMA project. We still, I think, have 70,000, 80,000 yet to be received.
Yes.
But sitting in that fund today is about 153,000. And I would like the board to authorize finance to transfer 150,000 back into this contingency fund so that at the end of the year, we have replaced the 200,000 in highway we took and the 150 we took from here, so that we are back flush to what we looked like 3 years ago. The money we put over there, we now took back. Okay? And I would like to do that because the auditors actually take this particular fund, combine it with the general fund anyway. And by moving this 150, when they combine it, we're gonna wipe out that 81,000 and add to our fund balance. All right? Again, we did this before as a board and then as a public. The public chose not to do anything at town meeting, this last town meeting. You've already taken action to move 200,000 back to highway. I would ask you to take the 150,000, move it back into contingency. It's not cash, it's simply an accounting procedure.
Right.
Since this is the last meeting before the end of the year, is that something you prefer to have done tonight?
I prefer someone to make the motion right now.
I had a feeling you had.
I'll make the motion to move 150,000 from the FEMA fund back to the contingency reserve fund.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to move 150,000 from the FEMA fund back to the contingency reserve fund. Any discussion?
I just had one question on that.
Yes.
If it's 153 and we move 150, where does the other 3?
Stays there,
It's just,
and
We're
it'll,
gonna get more.
we anticipate still more to yet to come.
okay.
Okay, so we are, if you will, draining the pool.
No, that's fine, I was just curious.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It shall be done. Next one, equipment fund.
Okay. Did you have a question? Okay.
Okay, the equipment fund balance sheet shows a mere $255.45 that this fund is in hock. Insignificant amount of money, and the way you now make purchases, instead of going to the equipment fund and making a purchase, you have a line in the highway budget that's called transfer to the equipment fund, but you just directly buy from it or directly make debt payments from it. You don't actually move the money over here. I would like to clear this by booking an actual transfer of $255.45 from the highway fund to this fund to zero it out.
From this fund to the highway.
Highway fund to this fund.
We have a specific, there's a specific line item
Yeah.
in the budget for equipment purchases. This is
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, it's labeled
But is it-
transfer to
sorry,
equipment.
Is it now negative now, or?
It is negative.
Oh, it's now negative there, so if that's, I now understand, that's why you want to transfer.
I just want to cover $255.45.
Take it out of it.
To act like we've moved money into that fund. We're already over budget on that line item anyway, because we missed the excavator lease payment, I think, or something like that.
Whatever,
And so adding $255.45 to that transfer out line will make this fund go to zero, and when we report it, it'll look like a transfer and zero at year end.
And so when we're looking at our fund to find out what we have for equipment, it will now be called what?
It's still this fund, but you don't use it anymore.
So what do we now use something called the equipment transfer fund?
You actually have a budgeted expense in highway under operations, at the very bottom of your chart, which we'll get to the budget status, that says transfer to reserve. And that's what this reserve originally was used for 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But then we stopped actually doing the transfer into this fund, which is nothing but an accounting function. We started making direct purchase, charge it to the transfer fund, transfer. We weren't transferring anything, we're doing a direct buy.
We do it, so if we want to know how much, if we want to buy a shovel for $10.
That's a different line altogether.
Jim, I'll make a motion to move $255.43 from the equipment line item in the Highway Department General Fund.
I will second that.
What did I say wrong?
You said
Oh, it's
43.
at 43, sorry, 45 cents from the
Highway fund,
Highway Fund to the Equipment Fund.
Leon seconding that.
Okay, so it's from the highway fund to the equipment fund, or the
Correct.
other way around?
Highway
The
fund
Highway.
fund to the equipment.
to the equipment fund.
To equipment.
And the whole purpose is to take this singular fund, which has been carrying this deficit for 3 years, and get rid of it. It's an accounting function, we're not actually spending any money.
Correct. Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It shall be done. Next balance sheet, Bridge Rehabilitation Reserve. This fund is, as we've talked about before, all the bridges, and right now the big project happens to be the bridge over the Saxon River that's
On hold.
on 121, that's kind of on hold, but, you know, we've already spent some money on it. This fund right now has traditionally been funded about $15,000 annually. And $15,000 is 1 day, 1 engineer in the state of Vermont.
Okay.
So we're not really throwing a lot of money at this. But at the present time, you have 137,000 still available in that fund. Your next year budget schedules to put $15,000 more in there. But should the 121 bridge take off, this fund will dissipate and may go in the red.
It will definitely go in the red.
Yeah.
Because what's the projection?
Yep, so part of previous discussions was infrastructure improvements and using ARPA funds to supplement infrastructure improvements, meaning ARPA funds into this fund to build it up larger. Don't know what that number would need to be, because the new projections for your share cost for that bridge aren't known.
And there was concern about timing of using your ARPA funds.
Yep,
Yeah,
expending them
expending them, correct,
before 2026.
correct.
Does that count as expending, transferring from an ARPA to a rehabilitation?
I don't think so, because you didn't pay a third party.
Right.
But if
You
we
didn't actually
transfer,
spend it, you just,
Right. if we transfer it and we pay enough bills for the amount that we transferred just to the state for engineering,
Then it's covered.
then we've spent it. Okay, and all of the preliminary testing and whatnot, your share is either gonna be 7.5, 10, 15, 18, or 20%. Depends on where you are in your, road process of meeting the best practices according to the state's orange book. So that's the concept behind where you are on that particular balance sheet. You're healthy, but you'll run out quick. Next one, retreatment fund. This fund has just under 300,000 available to it. Your commitment this year was 135,000. You have another 135,000 budgeted next year to go into this fund. Something's been done because you've spent about 8,000 thus far, but I doubt you're gonna have a bill come in that's gonna deplete this before June 30th. However, beginning of the fall or end of summer this year, calendar based, you might burn through all 300,000 of this. I don't know what your
This is,
paving
by
plan is.
retreatment, this is paving.
Paving,
And so we have a certain amount budgeted yearly to go into the fund.
Mhm.
And we have not
spent it,
spent it, and we don't look like we'll spend it by the end of this month.
correct.
No, but we will by the end of the summer.
But then in the summer, we're planning on doing some paving.
By
Yes.
the end of next month.
By then,
Yep.
next month, we'll have done some paving.
We're gonna start milling this tomorrow.
we
Yeah.
chose not to do anything last year with town meeting pushed back and then contractors booked up, and so it's a like a holdover to
Yep.
this year to do something larger.
So in reality, if you budget 135, you basically tend to spend 135 plus or minus.
Mhm.
the year that you didn't do anything, you doubled your numbers.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's not hard, Chuck can tell you, it's not hard to burn $300,000 on asphalt.
Mhm.
You know, how far do you wanna go, how wide do you wanna go, how deep do you wanna be? And gone. So, I'm not sure if the price per ton laid is better now than it was a year ago. Probably not, but there was one year that people planned on having all kinds of costs, and for some reason propane dropped like hell, and there we were, petroleum went down, and people were putting on the ground at $42 a ton, laying it out on the ground. You couldn't do that with your own trucks. You couldn't go dump 6 tons into a truck at that price. They charge you $80 per ton to dump it into your own truck. So, but that's how that retreatment fund is what it's always been labeled. Asphalt is what the common person will know what it is, paving. And that's the status of this. It looks like it's gonna remain that status for June 30 for audit, but will be gone based upon your plans.
Just a quick question to Chuck in regards to that. How many miles are we retreating in this summer session?
Right now,
Or what is the plan?
well, this year, we're gonna retreat, about 4 miles. Normally, you put enough money away to do 1 mile.
Mhm.
You have 20 miles of asphalt.
Yeah.
So what you're asking for is 1 mile road to last for 20 years.
Yeah, which
Ish.
So,
So the $8,000 was used just in potholes.
and this approximate 4 miles would be, will use up $300,000 total?
Well, we're not just paving, we're re-milling, we're redoing all the ground out, and yes, a good share that's gonna be gone.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that out of the, transfer from FEMA to highway, you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of that is gonna be used to pave from Beatty Road back to Cross Road and mill that.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
So now I need to be clear. The FEMA money that got transferred back to highway went into the highway fund. Not this fund, but the highway fund. So if the intention from what I just heard is to spend that on asphalt, be sure you charge those bills back to the highway fund and not to this fund. Unless you're going to take and transfer the money out of highway into this fund to then pay.
Got it. Did you get that for coding?
Okay? So, your vote was to highway, this is not highway. This is a reserve fund for asphalt.
right, which that'll come out, that one little project will come out separate, will be built separate of, there's an addendum to our original pavement plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's all. It's what you ordered and then what you agreed to do, make sure you charge it to the right place.
Thank you.
Next one, capital improvement fund. I'm not sure the origins of this. It could be,
We have reappraisal.
Next page.
Oh, it's just
Oh, yes,
a statement back.
reappraisal.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, reappraisal, all right. Reappraisal is funded by the state of Vermont and/or local taxes to put money aside for future reappraisals when you are required or desire to reassess all the properties in town. You have been accumulating, as it looks here, about $15,000 annually. Simply buy $8 or $9 per parcel that comes from the state annually. And it's been a number of years, I guess, since you've had to do a reappraisal,
2013.
2013. So quite a bit has been built up into this fund. It's presently sitting at $202,000. Anticipating next year another 15, you'll be at 220. And so you're ready for a reappraisal. Maybe not quite enough money to do a full reappraisal, because the demand is high and the availability of experts is low. But you'll have money set aside for reappraisal when that discussion comes up. Okay, then the next one is capital improvement fund. I'm not sure where this originated from, what its purpose is. In my eyes, when I see this, this is buildings, roofs, painting, whatever you're doing that is your own fixed assets to improve them, modify them, repair them, whatever that might be. We had quite a bit of a discussion during budgeting of the $20,000 for paving, and I said, well, if all you can pave is one side of this building, pave one side. I mean, paint one side. Well, something occurred in the past year in which $14,000 was expended out of this fund, but this fund also has its own cash account. Unlike all the other funds we discussed, their money is pooled. I would like to pool this capital improvement fund cash account in with the general fund checkbook like we do with all the other funds. Twofold. It eliminates the fact that we have one more bank statement for which I'm booking an amount of money, but this fund owes the general fund the 14 grand of this 59,000. And so if before June 30th, we close this cash account and combine it with the general fund, that will relieve the due to due from. It will go positive and look just like all the other funds that we've talked about. There is money in the general fund checkbook for capital improvement. Back in the day, everyone did accounting by banking. We need a fund for that. Somebody interpreted fund to mean we need a bank account. And so we open bank accounts and we open bank accounts and we open bank accounts.
And you really just need another line item.
So you need another stack
Can,
to track.
I want to make sure that we can, I'm concerned about maintaining our buildings and knowing how much money we have to maintain them. Clearly having a bank account with the money in it is a very concrete way of doing that. But you're suggesting that we can also do that, it's reasonable to do that by
Through accounting.
through accounting and not necessarily a whole separate bank account.
Correct.
We will, if we ask ourselves the question of how much is available for painting town buildings this year, will we all, town manager as well as you, as well as us, be able to readily access that number with what you're proposing?
I guess the simple answer is yes, you can always access the numbers in the accounting system. The question though, specifically you're asking about how much do we have to paint? Paint is a function of maintenance. We have a building maintenance line in the general fund for town hall that has $20,000 in it. And we talked about painting. Do we relabel that line painting because that's our plan? Or do we have the 5-year stretch capital plan that every year we revise? What are we gonna do the next 5 years? Because painting is a specific question, concept is what accounting is.
Maintenance, is maintenance under?
General fund,
General fund now?
yes.
And so our capital fund does not include maintenance.
I don't know what this fund is for. That's part of the dilemma. This is established, it's got a bank account, but capital improvement is,
Wasn't that for the renovation of the building?
maybe. I don't know when it was established, if it's done, if it's complete, and there's
Some
access.
history we're missing here.
Right, what was the purpose of this fund?
Right.
That fund may have been created in the process of the start of renovation of this particular building.
I think that's what it is.
Yep.
Capital
And,
improvement is for the building.
So it may be in some way dedicated to that, and if we were to tonight change things, we would also be changing historical purpose without knowing it.
No, no. We're consolidating cash to do less banking. We still have this fund in existence, and it will still have the same amount of value, $42,303.31, when we're done. It's just
It's
the resource
it's
of
a
the
line item.
cash.
Stephen.
Yeah,
Right,
I'm just, saying if there was a intended past purpose of this, for redoing our ceiling, and we then put it in general fund under maintenance, then we might be losing that original purpose and instead use it on redoing the Hearst House in Westminster West.
There's a bias there, but never mind.
Yeah, as a bias there. But I mean, but if it has a particular purpose, are we losing some intention?
None
I
whatsoever,
don't think so.
none whatsoever. We are simplifying our banking life. Basically, if we get money, we put it in the checkbook. And we credit whatever that money was for, whatever fund that belonged to. And the system manages through the do-to-do from you've seen on every balance sheet to say how much money in the general fund belongs to this purpose. And this purpose doesn't go away. I just want the bank account to be one I don't have to open, book $10 worth of interest to every month at $110 an hour. Some reason we're just not doing this correctly.
How would you like the motion worded?
To authorize finance department to close the capital improvement fund and combine it with the general fund checkbook on a cash basis only.
I'll make a motion to authorize the finance department to close the capital improvement fund and pool those funds with the
General fund check,
general fund checking cash basis.
just cash, yeah.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion?
Ally, from a town manager point of view, does this sound easy and feasible for you?
I think it's, yeah,
It's less work.
it's less work.
That's right, we like that work.
That's the goal.
And we can figure out what its purpose was.
Right.
Original purpose.
Original purpose is for the improvement of the town hall.
Yeah, so
And if we're done, and you wanna paint, and you've got 20 grand
it looks
over
like a
here, and,
little ceiling job, but I mean.
Right, it does.
no, it might be we do the roof before we fix the wet ceiling tile.
That's true, it just,
Yeah.
but I do not want to lose the hard work of previous generations
Yeah.
who had determined that there was a leak in the northeast corner and it needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And that the money's still there for do it, we just haven't got to it.
Yes,
I don't want to lose
we're not gonna lose that.
that past, hard work.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Make it so. Next one. Restoration of Records Fund. This board has nothing to do with this fund. This fund is totally at the discretion of the town clerk. There are fees that get paid for every land records recording. A portion of those fees go into this fund. At the clerk's discretion, she can spend money for the preservation of or digitization of records of the town. And just know again, $41,000 sits in the general fund checkbook, but it's earmarked for records restoration. Okay? And Steve, for your benefit, very few people have a checkbook to make the truck payment, and a separate one to make the car payment, and a separate one for the mortgage, and a separate one for their groceries. All I want the town to do is think the same way. With one checkbook, I can track all of this activity across funds. Next one, town garage fund, $63,000. This is not gonna build you a $2.5 million garage. Budgeted in the current year, we're about to close with $63,000 in highway to transfer in to the highway fund. With the initial intent, I believe, that that was going to be used to help offset, defray the cost of the fuel tank replacements, which
No,
already took place.
that was a completely separate budgeted item for fuel tank replacement.
Yeah. As an expense. As an expense. But it looks like in the budget process, they were gonna bring in the 63 to go against 78,000 anticipated spending. The project actually happened, a lot of it happened in 22, not in 23.
Yeah.
So we have in the budget in 23, this huge planned project for 73 grand, of which we think we spent 8. We'll see that in the budget report. So this 63 that was scheduled to go back to highway in 23, we never moved because we don't need it. which leaves it out here in the garage fund. So our best laid plans of transferring, we didn't need, finance didn't move it, and that's why it stays here. So this fund's intention is literally the town garage. You did do some improvements to the town garage this fiscal year, which we'll see in the budget status report, but we charged them directly to the highway fund and not to this town garage fund. I can't remember what it was, walls and doors or something, but we just called it just operational.
This fund though, being town garage fund, needs voter approval to move the money or just board approval to use the money?
Board approval.
Just board approval.
Board approval. Yeah. You can contribute to that through the budget process. You raise the money in highway taxes, transfer it over here, just like you do retreatment, just like you do bridges. You raise it as highway taxes and transfer it into the reserves. And that's how you present that. So the public approves the budget then moves the money into the reserves by budgeting and planning to do it. So for that, the garage fund, it appears that it was budgeted to move the 63 back in the current year, and we just didn't need to do it. Not necessary, so we're leaving it.
Good.
All right, FEMA storm. You've already voted at the bottom of this, you see there's 152, 334, 45 as the total fund balance. You've already voted to move $150,000 of that back to the contingency fund. So therefore, we have replenished what we already had taken, and the voters authorized us to take of $350,000. Gave highway back 200, gave contingency back 150. We're square to where we were before the storm event happened. Okay? And gosh, I hope we get another 70, 80,000 out of that. Then we'll decide where that wants to go. Vermont Community Development. I think I'll simply refer to this as the Westminster Meets Fund, in which Russ started a negotiation to close this out. Ally finished the negotiation. The bank sent the state of Vermont the value we had in this cash account. This fund will go to zero, and in theory, we are done.
Done with Westminster Meets.
With chasing Westminster Meets. However, the animal control officer is not. Too many things to know. Planning grants, all zeros, nothing going on in that. Special account funds. I only noticed that down here in the fund balance group, there is a fund balance that's called Tricentennial. So I think we're beyond that year as a special event. I'm not sure if this fund continues and remains to have purpose, if it was established by the board or by a public vote. It just is sitting here dormant, and this will be the third year carrying these values. So that's one of those, again, for history. Do we need a public vote to close this fund? Can the select board choose to close the fund? And there's another couple funds like this that are like recreation committee is what, and maybe they could use that. This is still money sitting in the general fund checkbook, but it's got an earmark out here, which has sat dormant for 3 years. What do we want to do?
The Tricentennial Fund, that would be for?
This is a special accounts fund is how it's labeled.
Yeah.
But the fund balance shows this designation saying tricentennial, which kind of gives me this, we intended to do a special event, so we set money aside for the tricentennial of the town.
Well, wouldn't that be in 2063? Or, you know, if the town was established in 1763, then that would be 20, we haven't reached it yet, I guess. Are we saving money for the future? That's a long way in the future.
Yeah, if you're saving $250 for now,
long.
For how long?
I don't know, but I'm just trying to figure out
That's
this
a,
from.
that's an expensive adventure.
Well, yeah, I mean, $250,
We're gonna pay Chip more to mess with this fund.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
you know, this was established, I'm not, and maybe it was just for the bicentennial and not tricentennial.
I don't know.
Yeah, so this is an insignificant amount of money, but it sits out here dormant. And what's its purpose? I don't know its purpose for this fund. Its title says one thing, its fund balance designates something else. And just based on the time frame to get to a tricentennial,
Yeah.
why are we holding $250 again? You know, what's that gonna be worth by the time,
So what do you recommend doing with it?
figure out what the purpose of this fund was. Ask around, I don't know the answer to that question.
Do we have to figure out that purpose before
You
we?
do not. You do not. In this case, this thing's been sitting here 3 years. It's not in the hole. I'm not trying to cover a deficit in it. It's a fund just like the capital improvement. What's the purpose of it? There's money in here, but there's so little money. What could we ever do with that? You know? That's,
So what do we want to do anything tonight?
we do not want to do anything tonight with that. I think that you've got a group somewhere out there that did some event. I want to say it's probably bicentennial, not
Left over,
tricentennial.
yeah,
And this is left over from that, would be my
yeah.
guess.
Left over from the years, okay.
Next one, ARPA fund, on your agenda for later. Right now, still available on a cash basis, $541,530.70. I say on a cash basis because I don't know what you folks have already committed that has not yet been purchased. So if you've got stuff that you said, go ahead and buy it, and we haven't bought it yet, this number is not accurate.
His heating system.
Oh, right.
That's still not in here yet?
Don't know.
My
I
word.
mean, I haven't,
Well, 12 weeks minimum,
Yeah, that's what
and
they're
that,
covering
so,
it, yeah.
it's getting close.
Okay, I was just curious.
yeah. Because we're on a cash basis, I'm telling you where you stand. If we were running accrual and doing purchase orders and everything else, I could tell you more accurately what your plans say you are going to be doing. Not attending every board meeting or watching it, I can't tell you what other commitments you've made with ARPA, not yet paid for, that this number is not the actual available number, because commitments have been made.
Don't believe
So
so.
if that's the case, then we paid half that heating system, so.
So that would be already out of there.
Yeah, that 541 is probably closer,
To
once that's
520.
paid for, is like, yeah, 520-ish.
Okay, yeah. With the anticipation of another bill coming, that was already approved by the select board.
Yes.
Okay. That's why I say that these numbers are what we have.
Yeah,
Next one, E911. This has been sitting dormant for 3 years. Back in the day, an E911 coordinator was critical for all the road numbering, house numbering, and whatnot. You still should have someone that is designated as your E911 coordinator locally.
Emergency management, same thing though?
Could be.
We have Peter Smith for that.
Okay, because this was, at the time, if you had to start hiring people, you established this fund for E911 for surveyors to go out and measure streets for you. You know, the highway guys can't do it, then you get somebody involved that's gonna measure where driveways are, to give house numbers,
for the numbers.
and all that evaluation. So this is a fund that still has purpose, because you still have new buildings going in, you still have driveways going in, not as frequently, probably, but there is a fund out here for that purpose, for E911 coordination. All of that's reportable to the state. Changes in street names, changes in house numbers.
You had something to say, Chuck?
I was just gonna tell you, Greg Holton and Mike Fawcett,
I was gonna say, yeah, we,
as far as I know, they're E911.
There are
Right.
911 coordinators, they go measure the streets.
At least they were.
Measure the
yeah,
distance between
probably with
driveways for
fire
911
department.
versus.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. Makes
Yeah, I
sense.
mean, that's, the whole purpose is public safety.
Yeah, makes sense.
So there's a fund out there for that. If something comes up and you're hearing 911, you say, well, we got some money set aside for that. And, you know, at the time, that you had to get software and then coordinate your data set with the state of Vermont. That was a lot of work. Emergency Management Fund is the next page, Fund 404. 745171. This fund, if I'm not mistaken, was filled with cash coming in from Vermont Yankee. And it was for purposes of computers and emergency management specific to around Vermont Yankee. So I'm not sure what is left and necessary of activity with this fund, with the decommissioning. So possibly emergency management coordinator may want to be able to say, hey, you know, what's the latest with the Vermont Yankee emergency management funds? Can we use those for other purposes now?
No, because,
I was thinking stipend, maybe,
yep, we had that discussion.
just because that's a lot of work.
Yep.
It's only gonna go so far, but.
Yeah.
Future meeting.
Next one, Recreation Committee. Again, I'm not sure when this started. It's been sitting kind of dormant. There is, within the general fund, there is a line item that sounds similar to recreation. Which may or may not be.
It's different, I think.
Does that apply to the Westminster Pool and Westbrook?
Yeah, one does. I think Recreation Committee is Westminster Pool. Activities Committee is, they would put on concerts and things.
They
that
do
the-
coffee hour over at the institute, that kind of stuff.
So, if
Typically, we paid for the liability insurance at the Westminster Pool, and they had a small fund for that. It's a privately owned deal,
Yeah.
pool, where
We covered.
they jumped at the rec committee and we covered the insurance expense for their yearly liability.
So, having been
Public
familiar
available,
with the Saxon River Recreation Area, same thing. Town would cover the liability insurance for that. It's now owned by the village of Saxon River, so they cover it. So again, the purpose of this fund may have existed to supplement it for use out there for improvements, or adjust the insurance, or to pay lifeguards, or anything. If its purpose is now dormant, gone, non-existent, then what should we do with this $711?
Okay, small.
$771, right?
But on the other hand, it is, its purpose may have been unexpended during COVID perhaps. But it's, the pool is there.
Yep, still being used.
Still being used, still needs maintenance. And.
Yep, still needs insurance if
Still needs
somebody's going there.
insurance, could probably use some sand or something. And I think it still has a purpose.
Yep.
I guess that's, it's not a purposeless one.
Yeah, and so, how does money get in, how does money get out? You know, what's the revenue stream in, what's the expenditures out? To identify, if it has purpose, then it must have some means of cash flow.
Does it receive money from the town meeting?
We'd have to, no, we don't, it's not in our list.
We voted on it before to put money into
I
that.
think, I remember
We
that.
discussed it.
Yes, it has.
Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, I can remember one year we gave money for, I think, Mr. Spalding to move rocks down there to keep traffic out of certain areas.
Always right, yep,
And that's just one that came to mind, but there were more.
yep, I do remember that.
And
That was a
I
town
don't-
meeting though?
It's not one of those that was a regular recurring item in town meeting and eventually became part of town budget.
Yeah.
Is there a town budget item for the Westminster Rec area?
I don't think so. It's gonna be in the special appropriations list,
Yeah.
so I don't think it's in there.
Anyway, it is a publicly used facility which has a purpose. $711 won't go very far in that purpose.
So that's why.
But the fund appears to have a reason.
Right, and then if it's gonna continue, what's the revenue stream, what's the expense stream, who controls that besides the select board on warrants? But, so this sits, and as a board, what is the purpose of this fund, so that usually the board here sees budget status report for general and highway and nothing else. And I'm going through every fund you have intentionally to say, you have this.
I think it's honestly an oversight of the budgeting process, which doesn't happen during the summertime.
Yeah.
And pool is entirely forgotten, but if the budgeting process occurred in June, we'd probably be putting a small amount of money intentionally into there. There would be a revenue stream, and there would be known expenses, and it wouldn't be at a forgotten time of year. So I think it's most likely what we're looking at is a bit of town oversight, town forgetfulness.
Well, there's a porta potty there now, somebody's got to pay for that somehow. Unless somebody volunteered, maybe, which is possible.
I don't know about volunteer, I bet Jeff probably did.
Well, donate, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
But, there's another, I'm not trying to speak out of school here, but they drain it.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's gonna
Clean
do
it.
that. They take the diving board off,
Yeah.
the stanchion. They take down the burn pits. There's some maintenance there, but I think a lot of it has been done voluntarily.
We do have a small fundraiser, fishing derby every year, and people donate money, it's free for the kids, but a lot of people put money into the kiddie farm and like that, they have a 50-50, and so.
But none of that cash comes through the town.
Right, that's right.
No.
But it would be possible for the town to send a donation its way towards the rec area for purpose.
If you decided to close this fund by sending $771 to them, that would close the fund. If that was its initial purpose.
That would be a logical way to close the fund. I guess my feeling is, it would be nice if we remember in December to think about whether we will want as a town to put in our budget, whatever, $711, whatever it is.
Well, this is a separate fund, not general fund.
No, I know, but it could go.
You
as
could
you
add
said,
it to
to
your,
the rec committee.
but if you added it as a board to a direct expense contribution yourself, not down in social services, but in your own budget,
Yeah.
select board, gift to the Westminster pool.
Could do
Okay.
it. Chose to.
Next one, Community Improvement Loan Fund, or better known as a revolving loan fund, which has a lot of loans out, no loan payments coming in. This has not been one that's been highly pursued, I guess is a good way to put it. On this balance sheet, it shows that it's owed $10,000, and that was some individual who actually did make their payments of $5,000 a year. They made it in 22, they made it in 23. The audit caught it and moved it to the right location as a loan payment. But this too sits out there in a very low interest bearing account, for which I'm looking, I think, $28 to $32 a month on 178. And yeah, and so this fund is owed 10 from the general fund. My thought is that we take this same thing and close the cash account into the general fund, let the do to from carry its value. We still have, on this balance sheet, $761,000 worth of loans owed to you.
761,000.
Who's the collection agent for that?
My word.
Well,
So how it, from history, from dealing with this years ago, the house can't be sold.
well, these were the home improvements out of the
Yes.
70s and 80s?
Yeah, there's lien, there's, no, I don't wanna say a lien on the property.
There is, should be.
Yeah, there's a lien, yeah, so, Fletcher Proctor was the attorney for this.
Right.
And so he would write up that it was a mortgage.
Yeah.
For some people, and some, folks went to go sell their house, remembered that they had this, they paid it, and their house could be sold. Other people, it was a work on a mobile home that no longer exists in Shady Barns. I mean, it's,
And those you're gonna eat.
yeah.
So, yes. I went through this exercise as well for the same program in Rockingham. And bless her heart, Dorian Aldridge pulled out every single one, found one that had never been recorded. And as well, found some that were home improvements to homes that literally had fires and are gone. They've been taken out. There's no recourse. So all of the loans you have can be revisited, if you will. What is their status today? And are there any of these that are, the board votes to forgive the indebtedness? This money was quite unique in that it came from the federal government with its intention to do home improvements. No interest, up to X amount of dollars. In some communities, that number was up to $30,000 you can borrow to improve your home. At no interest, and the loan is payable upon transfer of ownership, is the way it's written. And as long as there's a lien recorded, the transfer of ownership is gonna catch that. I had one in Rockingham that was never recorded. So we got that recorded. But if you now have something that is a lien against a 1963 trailer that is long gone from Shady Pines Trailer Park or any other location, the secureness, if you will, the security asset on that loan is gone.
Well, most of those would have been
Residential
residences,
houses.
therefore tied to real estate, which is still there even if the house is burned down.
Yes, yes.
And so remain as liens against those.
Unless
Unless,
there was a tax sale, and then all liens are forgiven.
okay, so there will be a few gone by tax sale.
Yeah.
But by and large, these would be for residences improved with the people who made the improvement still living there, not having sold it. Remains as a lien.
Yep.
And they may be basically intending to stay out there for stay
Yep,
there
yep.
permanently. So that it would be very gradual that those would come in,
Yeah.
but they would come in property transfers. When property is transferred.
Theory. So the question, we do have a list of them, but I don't know when the integrity of that list has been checked or challenged to say, does this still exist? So it's a question. But again, from a cash standpoint, we're not lending money out anymore. Physically, this was put it in the bank and I know how much I got available to loan. I can tell you the due to from tells me how much I got in cash that's supposed to be available for this. And eliminate, again, another monthly transaction, bank statement to open and balance and reconcile, which simply only has interest being added to it. It's at the lowest rate.
And you said how much is in there now?
The balance is $178,978.94. $179,000.
So let me ask you a question, please. I'm sorry, Stephen, if I may. What you know about this. Do we have any control over how the money is deposited as a board, or is it,
Deposited.
well, how it's,
When people make a payment, you mean?
no, the current cash position, do we have any control over how the cash is maintained,
So
invested?
an elected or appointed treasurer is responsible for all cash deposits.
Okay,
So, can you adopt an investment policy? Meaning, here's how we want the investments to be structured.
right, no, I'm simply, you said we're getting $28 a month, right? The cash value today is $9,287 on that amount that you quoted, meaning we should be getting $772 a month. So my point is,
Yep.
is there any way to position the 178 to the current market reality that we're currently in? Because that, to me, an extra $9,000 on that money seems like a substantial amount of money. Now, this is money in a program, though, even though it's accumulating now meaningful interest, it's a program that we really can't touch anyway, right?
Right. The purpose of this fund is for revolving loan.
Okay.
Yes.
Could we use a revolving, can we make another revolving loan?
Yes.
So
If you have a set of criteria, someone requesting to borrow from the revolving loan fund, typically for purposes of the business, negotiated, agreed upon payment structure and all of that jazz. Most of this as it gets established, was originally established for home improvement, was on the second cycle of those dollars, it becomes yours to manage as a revolving loan. So they thrust in a bunch of money into the community, and as the community pays it back, the town can use that cash to further invest in the town and businesses.
So we can still use this money.
You can loan this money.
That's what I mean.
Yes, you can.
And my question again is there any mechanism for us to get the proper velocity of income on that money?
You can invest it as a vehicle in anything that is secure.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the most secure investment in the world,
Yeah.
at 5.19 today.
Essentially just move it to a better interest bearing account.
That's exactly right.
Yes, but liquidity becomes then the question. If I lock it up for 5 years to get the best interest rate, if someone comes in and wants to borrow $100,000,
We're talking 90 days, 24-hour liquidity.
okay. Those are the conditions that you gotta keep it so it's liquid enough so that if someone does come in and wants to apply for a loan to build something.
Yeah.
Start a business, that you have access to the cash.
Right.
And right now, with my suggestion, just simply move it in the general fund checkbook, the cash is still readily available. And that right now is your highest interest bearing account.
Which is what?
I'm not even sure what that number is, what the interest rate is. They didn't put it on the statement.
Is it 5.19?
I doubt it. I doubt it. No, most banks have sweep account systems established where the investment side is the money, but, yeah. Here you could establish, your own management of money and moving money ACH every 2 weeks as you need to for your own cash flow to try to maximize interest. But someone's gotta be on top of doing that. But not that it's hard, it's just,
No, I mean, we have, and I'm using it as an example, if we go to Bank of Walpole, they control New Hampshire Bank and Trust, or New Hampshire Trust Company, right?
Yeah.
So they have a very pretty easy way of accessing the US Treasury bill market, which is the safest market in the world.
Yeah.
That rate today is 5.19. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if there's a way for us to capture that additional money, because we like to spend money here, and we could be getting more velocity on that money, is there a way we can do it?
so, again, right now, on the balance sheet, you'll see current year fund balance, $6,547.67. That is probably interest earned fiscal year. So that's close to what you were looking at, $770 a month. What I'm saying is, remove this thing.
$772, I'm talking about 178,000 in principal.
Yes,
But
So-
we were telling me we're getting $28 a month.
so there has to, well, we may have had other people pay back loans. Well, yeah, we had five grand came in,
That's Chester Gage.
Chester Gage. So that 5 grand came in and was booked against revenue. So of the 65, yes. So again, from our own ability to write checks, deposit money, one pocket. In that pocket, then all the interest that pocket gets goes into the general fund income. Because we're sitting over here stacking money and doing nothing with it. We don't.
But we are yoking with the general fund, the interest on this special program, according to what you just said.
Yes, you would be.
Okay,
And you're doing it for the highway and records restoration and
So,
paving
when
and,
I look at the overall income on our general ledger, I'm not getting 5.19% for fellow taxpayers, of which I am one. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
I'm not debating with you, I appreciate everything you do. I'm just, again, trying to plot the solution, because it's a lot of money.
yes,
I think, may I make a comment?
Please.
Just to play devil's advocate, but
Mm.
he explained that. He said you absolutely can do that, but you need somebody that's gonna manage it on a daily basis.
well, as you distribute checks, you gotta replenish the checkbook from the investment.
You can't come once a month and say, how we doing? It's gonna be a much more rigorous process than that.
No, it's not.
You are probably the most in the know.
Right, I appreciate your point. What I'm simply saying is, if our cash fund, again, I've had this conversation on Blue in the Head, I don't get it. With all my experience, I don't get it. Right now, our cash, everywhere, 5.19, that's what I get today.
Yeah.
No matter where it is, right? That's just, I don't need a treasurer, I don't need a special person we have to pay. If our money is parked in a facility where we have access to the US Treasury bill market, which we should, as many municipalities do around this country, and increasingly are looking for it, as we just went through the banking crisis, since we have a bunch of money that comes in and out, whether we have it for 30 days, whether we have it for 60 days, whether we have it for 6 months, when you've gone from 0% to 5 1/8, that money makes a difference. We had the same poo-poo on my recommendation when we were talking 2.75% 11 months ago. Now we've almost doubled that amount.
Yes,
I'm just trying to pick up more money for us.
yes,
That's all I'm trying to do.
yes.
Kevin, I think what you're saying is for all of the town monies.
That's correct.
We should be, which is a sort of separate topic, but it's a very good topic. That for all town monies, which are much larger than this little item that we're talking about now, we ought to be invested in a much better interest-bearing way. Like 5.something%. So that makes perfect sense. The Chip's immediate question is whether to move this 178,000 into the general fund checkbook and keep track of it as a fund for our revolving loan purpose. That question about the general fund checkbook, where should it be and what investment return we should be getting on it is another question, and a very good one, because it would certainly seem best to get the best possible rate, although knowing it is a checkbook. This is not just, I mean, if we look at the entire, dollars this town holds, they're going in and out constantly. It is a checking situation rather than a block going into investment. But nevertheless, the higher the rate, the better. And if we have a vehicle that could both allow us the flexibility of a checking account and the interest rate of the bonds, then sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
But your question right now is, do you want a motion
To close the community improvement cash account in Escova and combine it with the general fund checkbook?
and keep track of it?
By nature, we're gonna keep track of it.
I will make the motion that we close the community investment fund. Community improvement fund at Muskoma and move it into the town's general fund
Checking at Escova.
at Muskoma.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's gonna, again, simplify the account. This next page has multiple bank accounts on it. We've talked about it before. This is the fund, trustee of public funds, Pete Harrison and whatnot. These are the values. Not all the bank statements have been brought in or done for the year. This will get done when we get to, before we get to the audit. Whatever bank statements we have will be brought up and reconciled onto these funds. But again, notice that we've got accounts all over the place, and their ability to make any money and to be used for their distinct original purpose, just, you can't buy, 6 plants and put them in the cemetery for $500 when you got $300 available. So.
Correct me if I'm wrong again, but we had this discussion. I appreciate your due diligence on this. But these are, in effect, restricted funds.
Yes.
They fall under that term. Now, I'm not an expert on municipalities. I know on nonprofits, when something's restricted or in a financial institution, you have to have very specific release of the latch before you can unrestrict it. Now, these are specifically restricted So I would simply counsel the board on this. I'm certainly not gonna vote to support any type of movement on these funds just until we get a
None.
concrete answer as to how we can legally, if we can legally do that.
I agree.
Right, so this is the.
But I
again, the same
appreciate
list
you
we
lining
went
this
over.
up.
Just realizing that these are all under trustees of public funds, and every one of these has a bank statement, and I'm booking pennies.
I got it. It's a hassle.
Then the last one's long-term debt. Cash basis, we don't have long-term debt on the financials. So after all that excitement, that's just the balance sheet.
Yeah, right.
Balance sheet is what you have, what you owe, and what you're worth on a cash basis. Nothing more than that. There should be a one-page report in there that reads at the top, general ledger due to from summary report. Right? So this is the simple answer. How much money do I have in each of these reserve accounts? For Stephen. And you notice it sums to zero. And the reason it sums to zero, if someone says I am owed money, someone else must say I owe it. So therefore it has to sum to zero. We are, by actions already taken by the board tonight, we are gonna alter before June 30th. The contingent reserve due to from is gonna go from 0 to 150,000. Because we're moving from the fund known as FEMA storm due to from 152, we're gonna move 150 up into that other account. The equipment fund's gonna go to 0 because we're gonna take money from highway to zero that out. The capital improvement fund is gonna go to a positive number, the difference between 57,000 and 14,000, because we're closing that bank account. I already said the FEMA storm is gonna drop down to 200,000, to 2,000, because we're moving 150. And that the community improvement loan is gonna go from 10,000 being owed to being owed 188,000. The 78,000 in the cash that we're moving is just gonna add to the 10,000 we already owed it. And so, if money comes through the door, it goes into one account. There's not having to move money between funds, between bank accounts. And then when we spend it, we just make sure we identify that we spent it out of the right pile, the right silo, the right fund. That's why I brought up we intend to do some Belt Road, but that's money we transferred from FEMA to highway, so we gotta make sure that paving is charged to the highway fund and not to the retreatment. All right?
When we roll around to town meeting and we have Arthur Terry's ghost, or some similar person who's very concerned about what's, the difference is somebody who's looking. Difference is one year to next. I'm just, I want to make sure that we have a very clear explanation
Chip is
for.
gonna be there.
Chip will be there.
I think that worked out incredibly well having you there last meeting.
Just to make it nice and clear for the person who is concerned, who pays attention to our town books, is public spirited, but also a bit of a gadfly. That we can, we get the answers nice and clearly,
So,
and we won't seem like we're frozen in we can't find these numbers.
deer in the headlights, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, there was a question at town meeting from a former select board member of the contingency fund, how much money is in it? And I said none. So today, we resolved that, put the 150 back. That was specifically a fund that was asked about.
Yeah, exactly.
Another person asked about all these other reserves, paving, asphalt, and whatnot. Well, in town report, we didn't put this list, which simply is the list of all of our funds and how much money is held in cash for each of them. Right, this list alone, by their names, says this is how much is held. Now, how much is held June 30th, when you're talking in March? Almost is kind of immaterial. So this report, as of the time we publish the town report, is more current and accurate today. And then 30 days later when you meet, this could be different. But it gives them a picture of where you're at today, because you're always looking at stuff 9 months behind in the audits. And you're trying to budget for 3 months away, and the year you're in, it's kind of like, yeah, we're just in it. So that's the drawback of a March town meeting with a fiscal year that ended 9 months ago. But that's where I try to present, where are we now when I printed this book? And then what did it look like June 30th, and what do we anticipate for expenses next year? And try to include every fund, because every one of these funds is integral to what this town does. Taxation is the first two, general and highway. But the rest of those are all held. All right, the question becomes, do you now want to spend the time to go through the budget status? The next stack, this is year to date. This is the part in which most boards spend hours on, and they have no idea what their balance sheet looks like. The reason I did balance sheets first.
Thank you.
What do you have, what do you owe, what are you worth? This is budget status. The simple way I look at a budget status is, the budget is a BWAG, your best wild-ass guess of what you think you're gonna do, how much money you're gonna bring in, how much money you're gonna spend out. The column that's referred to as actual, what did you actually bring in, what did you actually spend out? The difference between your actuals, revenue to expense, is your current year fund balance, which we looked at on the balance sheet and saw the general fund is $81,000 in the hole. Only to the current year revenue to expenses. Not 81,000 in the hole, cumulative for all years. That number is a positive $87,000, because you started with 168 fund balance available. Okay, so it gets lost very easily when someone says, haven't you got to raise the money to cover that deficit? Not unless you're in total deficit. Then you've got to recover. But all you've done is reduce the amount of surplus you carry forward in the current year. And we're going to resolve that as well through the FEMA transfer, because contingency is rolled in. So there are a total of 28 pages. I only have notes on probably 30 accounts out of all of these pages. And so if you spot something, ask. I'll either know or can look it up. But I just want to pull attention to the following lines, starting on page 1, when you look at the property tax and the delinquent property tax. This happens every year. It looks like you didn't collect $395,000 unbudgeted balance for current property taxes. I just told you at the start of all of this, you had $350,000 in current year taxes yet to be collected. So not surprising, but a lot of what was collected late is down in delinquent property taxes. And I would venture that many who paid late, meaning after your February payment, their money got booked into delinquent taxes because by due date it was delinquent. But by budget, we still intended for that to be in property taxes at the top. So I intend to analyze cash that came in for 23 tax bills, although paid late, to move that value up into the current property tax line, because that's where we intend to collect it. By due date, it's late, but by budget, it's not late. And it makes more sense to show it that way. Otherwise, someone will say, well, let's budget $226,000 to collect on delinquent taxes in 25. No, can't do that. The next one, down in the group labeled revenue from the state, it's 101-22 section. You're shy in that one because we agreed this year to give the fire district their proportion according to percentage of total tax rate town and fire district. And so during the budget that we did for 24, we didn't compensate for that. but the budget for 25 should compensate for that. Anticipate the total, but budget a percent, given that the fire district is like 15 cents and you guys are like 70 cents. So know that you're not gonna get 100% because it's gonna come through your coffers and you're gonna send it out. The next one that I have a note on, 10128, ordinance fee, local ordinance fees. Those are municipal fines coming from the state of Vermont. They come in monthly via ACH. I have not seen the amount for May yet. It comes in June. And June's amount will come in July, and on a cash basis, we recognize it in July. So there'll just be a small amount more coming in there. Page 2, top line, school treasurer reimbursement, $1,000, been budgeted every year, it's nothing you ever get.
I used to get it.
I used to get
I
it,
used to get it.
but now it's part of the cash flow process, so
Well, I used to get it and give it to the town. The town got to get it.
it got the money from the.
Yes, it was signing checks for the school district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we haven't seen anything, should we ask for it? I would say again, I think this is even in the budget for 24, but for consideration for 25, don't put it in. For Kevin, interest earnings, 12,500. We are up to $21,250, and.
How about that?
And we're gonna get, we still have June, which will hit June 30th. So I get to book it into June's activities, so there'll be a little bit more money in there than that. But, and again, if we move.
You throw me a little shade on that?
I'm telling you, you wanted that number to be 26,000. Not quite, but that's next year.
Okay.
And maybe we'll be there. And again, it's gonna be easier to get there the more money we pool in that resource. And then if we shift
And
that.
the other thing, real quick, because so look, I just wanted to go back to that 178, right? What we were talking about?
Yeah.
And what I was trying to make that, we moved that 178, but we can't really touch it, right?
All we're doing is moving it from one cash asset to another cash asset.
No, but we really can't, it's always got to stay in there, right?
It has got to be held in reserve for the revolving loan fund. That's it.
I just wanted to be clear on my point to everyone in the room if they weren't quite catching it.
Yeah.
That 178, compared to last year to now, based on what I'm saying,
Yeah.
because it has to stay there,
We'll
Yeah.
make money.
is making 9,000, it, under my position, was making 9,000, where last year was
Yeah.
making 0.
Yeah.
Because that's where the market was.
Yeah.
That's all. I was trying to,
Yeah.
but we can't move, so just so everyone knows, we can't move that money. It's in there.
Well, you can move the cash, but you can't spend it on
Right.
any other purpose than what it was originally intended to be used for.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
That's key.
If we do loan out that money, we're
Right.
getting no interest on it as well.
That's correct.
Yes.
But it's a, right now, it's a moneymaker, is what I'm just trying to point out.
Again, the interest on cemetery fund is in the wrong place. The cemetery fund is in the trustees of public funds, and so that's where that interest actually goes. So I think in the 24 budget, I dropped that line. Looking under selectmen, salaries and wages, for the selectmen salaries, clerk salaries, those numbers missed in 22. The second payment to the board members and clerk did not happen in FY 22. So you have the equivalency of 3 payments in 23. So it's not that you got paid extra, it's just the timing of when you got paid.
Caught up.
Okay? Employee benefits to your benefit, but not to the greater good. Health insurance, 85.5, 23,595 actual, 61 not spent. You had no full-time town manager nor full-time finance director,
Right.
which were health insurance premiums budgeted to be paid that you didn't end up paying. That's why there's so-called savings there. And even with the savings there, we're still 81,000 overspent, if you will, revenue to expense. The real reason for the overspent is lack of revenue. Next, I have down in Wyndham Regional Planning, twice the money, same condition, FY '22 payment got made in '23 by fiscal year. '22 didn't get paid before June 30, got paid after June 30. So that's why that one looks like it's over. Legal services.
Yeah.
Double, we know why. Page 3. 3/4 of the way down, there's a line that reads, LOC Storm 2021 interest for $2,250. If you recall, we paid off that line of credit prior to June 30 of '22. So this line has nothing to be paid against it. All the other lines just look normal. And if you spot anything that you want to question, either, call it out now, or you can email Ally and she can ask me. Next one on page 5, almost in the center, municipal building utilities, heating oil. We've had this discussion. Budgeted 2,500, spent 5,000 just about. That's a tank replacement, refilling the tank with fuel oil. Here at Town Hall. Nothing extraordinary on page 6. On page 7, bottom line of the actual that shows negative 81,372.84 matches the balance sheet, current year fund balance as a deficit. Again, current year fund balance is actual revenues less actual expenses, and you spent more than you brought in. There's a little bit more to come in, but not $81,000 worth. On the highway. So this is page 8 of 28. Again, the transfer in from reserve, 63,000. I saw that as coming from the town garage fund, because that's where 63,000 was. We did not transfer that. And I only associated it to being part of the fuel tank, because there was a budget for the fuel tank, which most of that took place in '22. Note 2 lines above that 63,000. There's a state grant not budgeted, 77,000. And a USDA grant for Piggery Road, 92,000. Unbudgeted revenues. Those are primarily spent under the road maintenance contracted services, where you see 7,000 budgeted and 154,000 spent. So though the expense looks over, and if you were only looking at expense, you'd be asking, what? But by looking at both the revenue with the expense, you can see there was a charge of cash that came in, and some of that work was done by your own staff, whose wages and salaries were reimbursed, but they weren't charged off to the contracted services. Contracted services, I don't know, Bucky Adams or somebody.
Some was Basin Brothers.
Basin Brothers. So that's where you have to look for things that are over budget to see how did we pay for that, look in the revenue stream. Did we get reimbursed by some other source that we didn't anticipate in the budget? I do see listed here a FEMA out of $25,000 actual with no budget. I'm not sure what that was.
I did that for Chuck.
Okay, which is,
That just paid Bucky Adams. I did it for 121.
For catch basin replacement, which,
We didn't know what to call it because he had that FEMA expense, FEMA revenue, so he wanted an expense line.
okay, so the answer to that is, it's not related to the storm.
We should name it something different.
Yes, the name should change.
Okay, what do you wanna call it?
Catch
Because,
basins on 121.
No,
Well, no,
no,
because-
because it's whatever, it's for a
Oh, because
multiple purpose.
Because it's for the 200,000.
Right,
the 200,000, all right,
that
We
FEMA,
transferred.
okay.
or some of it's gonna go to paving that we discussed,
Okay.
some of it's going.
So what do you want, what should we call it? I can rename it tomorrow.
I would just combine it in with contracted services, that's what it was.
Put it in contract, if he doesn't want it in
Well,
contract.
no, he just told us that we couldn't do that with paving, it's the same thing. When we
Well,
pave, that's not part of paving it's coming out of that money, so it shouldn't come out of our paving. This is,
He wanted to keep track of that 200,000.
I thought that's what
That was
I
a
thought that's
revenue.
what we just said I had to do.
So, 200,000 is coming into the highway fund.
Mhm,
You earmarked it for purpose,
mhm,
and you won't reach those purposes before June 30th.
correct.
So, if we are going to establish that those other purposes, what's left, 175,000, is supposed to go to something else, should we then be moving it to a fund that is for that purpose? Or just roll it into the fund balance and continue in '24, which starts 5 days from now, to do those projects and charge them here to just projects. Or you could say it's the select board vote on whatever day you voted for it.
The select board just voted to use it as,
The motion was made for the use of repair and maintenance of roads,
Okay, so,
which could be gravel, it could be pavement, it could be whatever.
under road maintenance, we have, it looks like 15 lines. And we can go over budget on any one of those lines, so that when we buy a spade, we call it a spade, we don't call it a rake, because we had room in the rake budget. So if, what he did was culvert drainage fabrication. Sounds like drainage to me is what he did. So, go over in drainage. You're already over by 1,300 bucks. But that's what that was drainage repair.
I think you just wanted to keep,
He wanted to keep
A-
track of it.
well,
But at June 30,
Right.
unless,
what, you gave this money for this purpose and these are the projects it was used
that we
for.
did.
Right.
So,
Was that overcomplicating it? Is that what
yeah,
you're?
it's unnecessary. Unnecessary. So if you wanna keep it within that line, then you could say transfer expense.
Transfer.
But putting the word FEMA on it, it's gonna draw attention to a whole grant project.
Yeah.
And that's not what your intention is. I saw that, I put a question mark next to it and said, maybe this belongs in the FEMA fund.
well, the vote from the taxpayers was to transfer money from the FEMA surplus to highways.
So there was no vote. That
Well,
didn't
right,
pass.
they didn't, yeah, they
The
did.
select board voted.
Right, it did not the
The whole
article
article.
did not pass.
Yeah.
The board then voted to move $200,000 to the highway fund, or to the highway general fund.
Yeah.
For the repair and maintenance
Of
of
roads.
roads.
Which,
It's not for equipment, it's not for.
right,
Right.
it's for anything that's under the road maintenance group.
Right,
So,
because originally they said dirt roads only, and then they
Oh,
said,
yeah.
no, paved roads, so I mean.
Yeah.
And I
And then
totally
they rejected
appreciate
the whole
wanting
thing.
to keep track of,
Right.
no, I started with 200 and I spent 50 on this and 50 on that. It
So-
seems simple enough to do to me, I don't know how to do this
Yeah.
system, but.
Yeah.
so
I'll
just
change the
relabel it
name.
to transfer expense. Yeah, because we have to transfer in from FEMA. It's gonna, whatever the net of all of this is gonna drop into fund balance when you're done on a cash basis. Because we didn't intentionally set that up as FEMA reimbursement fund to track.
Yeah.
And tomorrow, you know, you could burn it all up tomorrow if it continues to rain. So I saw that, again, no budget, but we have an actual there, and now we know what it is. Next page. Equipment, building maintenance. This is a case where the repairs were done at the town garage. We had 12,000 budgeted, spent 26. In lieu of spending money out of the town garage fund. we went over budget in this to do building maintenance. All right? The next one, gas, fuel, and oil, 75,000, spent 88. And again, the fuel tanks got filled when they got replaced. So that's why, the primary reason we're over on that line. Fuel tank removal. This was, where 78,000 budgeted, spent 16. The bulk of that project was done prior fiscal year. And so because we spent 16, and if you took that away, you get down to your 63. I didn't transfer the 63 in because I associated that 63 in was meant to offset that 78 expense. And we didn't have a 78 expense. So that's why I didn't transfer it. And then, highways, last item, transfer to equipment fund, the way it's labeled. We don't actually transfer, we just directly debt pay. And we missed the, I don't know, $41,000 excavator lease payment, I think is what it is.
Truck
It
payment.
was a truck payment.
Truck payment, the last of the truck payment. So we budgeted 175, spent 213. Again, I'm gonna add 255.45 to that total, so I can clear out the equipment fund. All right, contingency reserve. By June 30, we will see $150,000 transferred back in from FEMA to replenish what we gave 2 years ago. Equipment fund's gonna see revenue of $255.45 by June 30th, so that fund will zero back out. It's only an accounting function, and it'll go away. Bridge rehabilitation, 15,000 in, but we actually had budgeted in there 37, 74, 74. I'm not sure what that was, but it's a perfect match of something we knew that we had to pay for, relative to bridge rehabilitation. So that, I think, is just part of the 121 bridge escapade that we're all on. Yeah, we're all here, everything's built. Oh, I guess we're not doing that. So we've spent money more than twice what we transferred in for the current year. Retreatment fund. In this year, we transferred in 135,000, which is budgeted to be done, and you spent 86, 79.51, just doing patches, potholes. Reappraisal fund, again, resources come from the state of Vermont on a per parcel basis. So that's nothing from tax dollars, that's just the money that came in, comes in every year. Next one, capital improvement, interest income in the fiscal year, $493.09. Next year, we won't have that bank statement to be dealing with. This fund will sit there dormant, just like all the other funds, with the money sitting in the checkbook, making money as it can, with the other cash on behalf of the general fund taxpayers. Records restoration, direct fees paid by recordings, and no money was spent this year by the clerk. Town garage, nothing in, nothing out. FEMA storm. I have a question next to $7,200 hazardous mitigation that came in. That project was the Westminster Heights culvert.
Yeah.
And that was the residual balance after that $84,000 project was completed. This was the balance owed on that project from the state, I think. You've gotten a partial payment.
Yes, we've gotten
Yes.
a partial payment for everything,
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, we're still owed money, but I think the hazardous mitigation grant has been completed.
Yes.
All of it's been paid back. That was a separate project from the FEMA storm. So that's what that 7,200 is. And then you're gonna see an increase in the transfer to highway. You're gonna see a line that says transfer to contingency for the 150,000 added to this. Community development, Westminster meets interest income, $25.32, but we closed that account, getting away from that political nightmare. Planning grant, no activity in or out. Special accounts fund, no activity in or out. ARPA money, money that came in this year, 407,000. And that's basically the second half payment of the town's award, and then the second half payment of the town's share of the county award. And then a supplemental piece because some applied for and didn't qualify, and they had to redistribute that money. And then ARPA, new equipment, 205,000 spent. And then this little number, as I was reconciling taxes billed, taxes collected, and calculation of the tax rate. In the 22 town meeting, there was an article for $25,000 to raise and appropriate and give to the Westminster Institute for purposes of the elevator. We did not do that. It was not part of the tax rate calculation. But subsequent to that, we actually voted to use ARPA money to do that. So the intention of supporting the Institute happened, the method as voted did not. It may or may not be a finding in the audit. I'm gonna disclose that I found that this was a discrepancy in the way the tax rate was calculated. We made good on the promise of the voters. Our method of payment was not what the article intended.
The implication of that is that we raised, or requested, we got from the voters' tax rate, $25,000 more than
We never put it in the tax rate.
never put in the tax rate, but we didn't actually need the money because it got from ARPA anyway.
So,
No foul.
well,
Well,
not
wait,
exactly.
not exactly, because if they don't put the elevator in and they don't actually use those funds, we should probably not do that.
Well,
Because,
you've already given them the money,
well,
physically given them the money.
correct.
So if they don't put it in, this is, refer to the third TV missing.
Right, right,
And Stan,
right,
you bought it and then you sold it.
right.
When you sold it, the money you got went back against the ARPA. But you've already reported those as expenditures, so kind of double there. So in this case, you gave 25,000, they can only use it for an elevator, so if no elevator gets in, you go back to them and say, give me back my $25,000.
That money has to come back to the town,
Has to come back,
and it will.
yeah. So,
That's not enough of what they need in it.
no,
You
they,
need like 200,000, if they can
The
even do
whole
it.
project's in jeopardy.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
So,
so,
And if it doesn't, the money will come back to the town.
yeah. But again, going back to a article that passed at town meeting. Shall the town of Westminster raise and appropriate $25,000 for the Westminster Institute elevator? Yes. And we didn't raise it, but we did get it to them through ARPA. Okay, we didn't raise it in taxes, that's what the motion said. So bad on us, but they did get their 25,000 through a different means. Okay, and what that would have meant is another 3/4 of a cent on the tax rate had been done. So it's an acknowledgement, it was a finding in 22. It's now gonna be a finding in 23, but if I disclose it first, it might not be. So that was an interesting process that I went through. So that's ARPA, which is on the agenda later. E911, no activity in or out. Emergency management, no activity in or out. Recreation committee, no activity in or out. Community improvement loan, yes. Our revenue primarily is made up of $5,000 of a loan payment that came in. And then interest income, $1,500 on 178,000. And so we can do better than that by combining it with a couple million we already have in the other account that's at a higher rate. And then public funds, this is probably what takes the most time when you're looking at sale of lots and then interest income lines. And you can see that a lot of them are under $10 for interest income for the whole fiscal year. And, yeah, those statements are just, they're time consuming. They get done, but they're time consuming.
Right.
So that's my highlights of what you have, what you owe, what you're worth, what you plan, what you do. Appreciate the recommendations being taken to consolidate cash, do some transfers to clean up some of the account funds, to zero them out. And I think in the end, we should have a cleaner looking set of reports, because like all other reserves, they're just held in one cash account, and we have the silo fund that tells us what our purpose is and how much is available. And so you should never have to go borrow money, because you can short-term borrow from the money you already have. And I see that way too often.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you
questions?
very much.
Well, thank you.
So I
Very
didn't mean to
thorough.
take up 2 hours of your time.
That's all right.
Very little will change, and I hope to engage Jordan with the preliminary stuff and start compiling the stuff for the audit, so that we are, I prefer to be done with the audit, September, October.
No kidding.
And that's where we're at. If you do peruse this over a cup of coffee at the table and you have questions, run through Ally, so she'll know and she can rifle to me if she can't figure out the answer. I will connect, make all the adjustments, and our representative at the bank has told me, until you drain the account past zero, you can transfer money yourself. So I will take care of doing that. I had to do that for the fire district already. So we should be in good stead, and the financials are gonna change according to what you voted on tonight. And I think we're in good shape.
All right.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
So glad we had this time together.
It's always fun.
Yeah. It's always real, it's always fun. It's not always real fun, but
All right.
if you don't need me for anything,
Thank you.
Thank you.
there's a tequila and coke in front of you somewhere.
That sounds delicious.
See ya.
Bye, thank you, Chip.
ARPA application, there's 2 in our packets. One from the highway department for the used asphalt hot box, and one for Grout Avenue water line replacement. Anybody want to speak on their projects?
Yeah, I'll talk.
All right, Lou.
All right, I'll keep it clean too.
Thank you for being patient. Sorry.
Basically, I have Lonnie here with me, he works with me on the board. So an all volunteer department, we got Jimmy Grout, we got me, we got Tony DiOrio, and Linda Fawcett. So Linda, I and Lonnie do 99% of the work. And the situation on Grout Avenue is that the water pipe that's in there was the cheapest thing they could buy at the time. So there's 2 water lines in there. One's already failed. And that's, both these lines are in the road. So Chuck wanted to move them to the side of the road instead. So that would be dig up 701 feet. It's probably 6 feet deep. And go all the way up to, where are you paving to?
Right to the end.
Where it is now?
There it is now, yep.
Okay. So, and we have 3 people on there. We have fire department, we have Phil Cody and his significant other?
Nancy.
Yes.
Nancy, all right,
Nancy
Yeah.
Roberts.
yeah. So, as of right now, the line is there. Now, when it could fail, who knows? You know? And because the pressure is so low in this town, you can't find it listening to it unless it's at a valve where you can hear it. Now, I have a device. I can find 99% of the leaks, but I can't find them in that area because it's plastic pipe. And the state basically wants me to raise the pressure down the road here and spend probably $250,000 to update the system, of which we're private, all volunteer.
No budget.
No, but, well, we got,
A little.
yeah, look, we had almost $90,000. But I had to put in a line contactor to fix the pH of the water, and I had to put in meters, water meters. So that sucked up 60,000 of it right off the top. I currently have a application for a loan to the state for PER, they call it, preliminary engineering report to fix low pressure. I don't have any electricity. They don't let, I have to have a tank alarm, chlorine injection, and all this stuff could add up to $200,000. So my budget is pretty tight. And I haven't heard from the state yet about my preliminary engineering report. So they were talking about when the road was dug out, put a new line in, probably be 160 PSI, 1-inch line, and replace it. We could go approximately 600 feet with one piece. And if we put in a 1-inch line, down the road, if I could actually shove a piece of PEX through there, if I had to, if it ever failed me, just pull it right up through. Right now, it's impossible to do it because the diameter of the pipe's too small. And we don't know where the connections are. So that's basically what the project would involve. The thing is though, we're on a timeline here. When are we talking this?
Second week in July.
Second week in July. I don't know if I can.
2 weeks from today.
So this project's been ongoing for a year, but the deal is, we're paving Grout Avenue, we're gonna take it right back to dirt, reshape the fire department's parking lot, do away with that pond issue there. The fire department also has their water line, which goes under their parking lot, that they're going to replace.
That's disconnected. It's one water line.
Okay, the fire chief said something about digging up a new, underneath the parking lot, I don't know. The point is, I just feel like if we're gonna do this, the time to do it is before we put down brand new asphalt. And then decide next year that we wanna rip it back up and put down water line.
Makes sense.
They obviously don't have the funding, ARPA does. So I asked them to apply to ARPA for the funding so that we could not rip the street up next year.
The only other alternative would be when they dug up the fire department's parking lot, put a 2-inch piece of pipe in the ground, and then you could run a line through it later without digging up the parking lot.
Just leave it, yeah.
Yeah, and leave it there.
But the line we're talking about is relevant to the fire department's mission, correct?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
it's their water supply.
It's their
They
water
can't
supply,
use it
yeah.
for a fire.
And two homes.
And two homes.
domestic homes.
2 homes up there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any input from the committee?
There's a footnote on your proposal that I wrote, and it mentions exactly that. Due to the significance of the fire department's need for water, as well as the other households, and the high score that it achieved, we deemed it a worthy project, but we don't make that decision.
Thank you, Paul.
I'll make a motion that the select board approve the ARPA application for the Grout Avenue water line
And
replacement,
I'll second that.
not to exceed $13,500.
Second.
Now, let's say I can't do this in time. I would just give you your money back, or you don't give it to me until it's completed.
We don't,
We don't give it
we don't
till
give
it's
it till we have an invoice, right?
When it's invoiced, we pay it.
Oh, okay. But what's my guarantee that you'll pay me?
Trust.
I
Right,
collect
it's the
money
honor
too.
system.
I know all about collecting money
You'll get it.
from people with water
Motion has
systems.
been made and seconded, any discussion?
All right,
There is an answer to that, if I may, other than the kidding aside.
yeah,
When the select board decides to approve the project and fund it,
yeah,
we have a timeline that money has to be spent. So the
Right.
first process is to approve it, that's an expenditure. The
yes,
second process is meet the 2024 deadline. So you
right.
have till the end of 2024.
I have till the end. But see, they don't want me digging,
You have 2 weeks.
yeah.
No.
They don't
Well,
want,
I'd already talked to Charlie, and he sounded to me like he was keeping a spot open in anticipation
yeah,
that you were gonna get the money.
yeah, wow, no, okay. I mean,
That
I,
was a lot of the discussion as well, and keep in mind, everybody, that we're an ad hoc committee that doesn't make decisions, but we were concerned too. For the expense of paving, the burden to the select board of explaining that down the road, why they would ever have to dig that up in a year's time maybe, was a concern, but that wasn't a factor for us to use, only to bring up to the surface. The one factor that, as long as I have the floor, that as chair and committee was unanimous in concern about, was Mr. Blanchard is gonna leave for England. I believe.
yeah, but Lonnie here knows the whole system.
So we made a recommendation
Yeah.
that Mr. Blanchard appoint somebody or some people that will serve in his place, because he filled out the proposal. And in the explanation of the proposal and filling it out, he becomes the facilitator of the project. Burden lays on Chuck, ultimately, and the select board. But as the proposal was filled out by him, he's supposed to be available. So what we asked him to do was to identify to the select board who he's going to appoint as contact for the road foreman, for the select board, for Charlie, for the fire department, whoever needs to be involved.
I'll be back on the 15th anyway, so if I don't go on my 35th wedding anniversary anywhere, you won't have a wedding operator, you won't have an operator either, because my wife will kill me.
Motion has been made and seconded, any
All right.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
All right,
all right,
Thank you.
Chuck, you're on box.
Thank you, Lou.
okay,
Bye, Lou.
So we already discussed this with you guys briefly, I told you about it, it's a pavement heater recycler.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's one other thing. I'll be back at another date, because we gotta figure out something to do with this water system. I'm 75 years old. I'm not gonna die up there. That's to put it in simple words.
You dig that as pavement.
Yeah. So we gotta figure out something long-term for the town. We got 55 houses on this deal, you know? And the whole volunteer thing is drying up.
Mhm.
I've been at it 12 years.
That's 55 wells that can be done, make a couple of contractors pretty good money though.
How much-
If we just got rid of the whole system now, isn't that true?
Yeah, but you could do that. Who's gonna pay for that?
I know, I just want, while you're here, I just want to thank you for all the incredible work you do on that system and how you've maintained it, because nobody has raised it to the bar that it is, thanks to
We're
you,
trying to bring it into the 23rd.
with no money either.
Yeah. We're doing okay, we're getting there. But I think we have to think long-term, what's best for the town and best for the system.
Quickly, do you have any recommendation, other than the fact that it gets mothballed and everyone's got to go for their own well?
I know in Putney, they use a private contractor.
Mhm.
But see, that's through, the town has their own water department. Here we don't. So it's a private business.
Your water department.
Yeah, my water department, right. But we gotta figure out something here. Cause I'd like to leave it, you know, where I know it'll be sustained for the next 100 years at least.
When you come back, we'll put it on the agenda.
All right.
All right?
I got a letter for you, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And when I'm in England, I can Skype Lonnie. I have Skyped the phone. So, we're in
Okay.
business.
Okay.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right, Chuck.
yeah.
Yep.
Good for it.
Okay.
He is.
So anyway, I went to that deal up in, Barry, and I found this hot box that reheats asphalt, heats coal patch. If you don't use all the asphalt, you get a ton of asphalt, you use half of it, you got some left, you keep it in there for 3 or 4 days, add a little emulsion to it, reheat it, and it, just like now.
Basically used for patching roads.
That's what it would be for, is maintenance. It's, a new one is 19,000, this one is 7. The 7,500 is $500 shipping to get here, something more than Maine.
Make a motion to approve the ARPA funding for
Seconded.
the used asphalt hot box not to exceed $7,500.
Second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Possible, dog ordinance amendment. Stephen, you have things to say about this?
I do. I do want to make it brief, so it's in notes here, which you just figured out. My concern is that there is a distinction between dangerous animals and a number of other animals that violate our dog ordinance, and yet there's no distinction in how our currently very reasonable sheriff's animal control officer could approach them. Our ordinance is written in a rather aggressive way, and it functions fine because we have a very reasonable dog officer, or a animal control officer. But we can't guarantee we'd always have such a temperate person. Particularly, I would call your attentions to section 5A, where it says, a duly authorized animal control officer is hereby authorized and empowered to obtain search warrants to enter upon private lands, to seize and impound domestic pets, domestic animals, and wolf hybrids, and to take all reasonable necessary measures to abate violations as herein defined. So I would propose that we really don't need to be empowering the sheriffs to go and seize animals whose violations can be like pooping by the edge of the road. And so I would propose that on section A, we change the language, striking it from the section domestic pets, domestic animals, and wolf hybrids, and to insert instead the language dangerous animal as defined above. Dangerous animal is defined as an animal which, running at large, causes reasonable fear of bodily injury by attacking or threatening to attack domestic pet, a person, domestic pet, or domestic animal, or is diseased and dangerous to public health. So that sort of animal is an animal that we have a public interest in having the ability for the sheriff to get a search warrant, enter somebody's home, take their animal, and dispose of it as needed. The same situation applies in Article 8, Section A. An animal control officer is authorized to confine or impound any domestic pet, domestic animal, or wolf hybrid, which is violating this ordinance, and which is suspected of having exposed to rabies, or is believed to have been attacked by another animal, which may be rabid or been attacked, etc. and they substitute again the language of it from any domestic pet, domestic animal, wolf hybrid, to instead insert the language dangerous animal, because when this thing is violating this ordinance, includes all animals that are running at large, pooping in the public road, or just simply not licensed, and we got a very long list of licensed animals. We do not need to hire the sheriff to go and get search warrants for all these houses, take away all these pets, and cause all that chaos in the town that that would result in. When what we really want to do is not have animals being dangerous in town. If we change the language that way, we also, to a certain extent, change the ability for people to put out surveillance cameras to detect their neighbor's dog who they don't like crossing their territory or crossing their property, and having the sheriff called on that dog. It still allows us to fine a person when there's a violation, but it doesn't get the sheriff involved, and in so doing, cost us money and cost us a lot of strife in town. So my recommendation is that we make a simple change to the language dangerous animal, which is defined in the provision here, for those two sections.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Just to go to Article 8.
Article number 8, yep.
I'm totally in agreement with everything you said. I just wanted to, did you want to remove the construct of rabies, though?
Let me see, I was, no, the rabies thing is pretty much governed by the state, is a standard process. If animals have been bit by a rabid animal, what is recommended here is what is standardly done and has been done for many years.
So we'd be cutting, my question is, Stephen, that we would just be amending the language up to violating this ordinance, or which is suspected of having been exposed to rabies.
Yeah, that's right. We'd only be striking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. The domestic pet, domestic animal, or wolf hybrid, and inserting their dangerous animal. So we're taking away, essentially what we want to take an action on is a dangerous animal and not on a disobedient animal, if we want to call it that.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
For Stephen's instruction, I would like to propose the following amendment to the Town of Westminster's Animal Control Ordinance dated January 2019. Millie?
Yep.
That Article 5,
Yep.
Section A, where it says, animal control officer is hereby authorized and empowered to obtain search warrants to enter into private lands to investigate a dangerous animal.
Well, it would be to seize and impound.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, leaving the siege and impound.
Okay.
Only we're changing from the phrase domestic pets, domestic animals, and wolf hybrids to dangerous animal.
To seize and impound and strike domestic pets, domestic animals, and/or wolf hybrids, and insert the reference to Article 2, definition of dangerous animal 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Can I make
Yes, sir.
are you limiting your?
I'm sure,
Yeah,
I think
hold on.
just a moment, I think the motion is only halfway made.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it for Article 8 as well? Same
Yeah,
language?
I was gonna go to Article 8.
Yeah, just to finish that process.
Moving on to also amend Article 8 to remove to strike any domestic pet, domestic animal, or wolf hybrid, and replace that with the definition under Article 2 of dangerous animal 1 and 2.
Got that, Millie?
Yeah, I guess.
Yes, Paul?
That has been seconded.
Oh, sorry.
I'll second it for
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Jason.
sorry, Jason. Sorry. Yes, Paul?
My only concern, I guess, is whatever, or I just want to ask is, are you handcuffing yourself with domestic? So what if somebody has a boa constrictor in town?
A dangerous animal is an animal which running at large causes reasonable fear of bodily injury. So that, a boa constrictor is exactly in that. Incidentally, for instance, a mature bull is in that category too. You know, there are a number of statutorily defined, a tiger is in that category. But what we're taking out is just an animal that is does the wrong thing or is in the wrong place.
I would prefer to have a legal opinion before we amend an ordinance, because that's not a little undertaking, that's a big undertaking to a degree. It potentially changes how you enforce it. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea, we just like a legal opinion on the wording. And there is a process to the whole ordinance. Amending an ordinance has to be posted and people can petition against it, and so it's not something that's gonna happen in one meeting. It'll be like a months-long process by the time you post it. I think it also has to be run in a newspaper once we've voted on our amendment. Just so you know.
So how do we start that process then?
Well, you made a motion for the wording.
Mhm.
So I think if we,
It's been seconded, we vote on it.
correct, and we vote on that, and then we can submit it for a legal opinion if the rest of the board agrees that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So what about, the humane disposal of someone's animal? You know, I know the state says that you can do it in 5 days and that we've given 2 extra days. I don't think that we should be disposing of anybody's animal. The state of Vermont has a first bite law. The state police will take care of it, but for us to take on the responsibility to dispose of someone's animal, and that is a domestic animal, that's a cow in our domestic animals in this. I'm not comfortable with the fact that someone's gonna make a choice whether to dispose of someone else's animal. Like, why would we wanna do that?
Let's finish the motion first, and
Finish the
then we
motion
can.
and then, any discussion for the current motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then about disposing animals, do you have a particular part of the ordinance that talks about that? I remember seeing that, but I can't,
It's
under
on the
article.
second page, it says.
I'll do it. So the motion, we have to do one other motion, so motion to,
I'll make a motion to send the recommended changes to the animal control ordinance dated January 2019 to legal counsel for approval.
Yeah,
review,
review, there you go.
seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, next, sorry.
You're referring to the second page, that's just the definition of humane disposal. It's not where it talks about where we can, under what conditions one would do it.
It's
there'll be
there's
somewhere
another one
else.
in here, Liz.
There is somewhere,
Yeah, I'm sure it's here somewhere.
yes, once they
As you
seize
read
an
it,
animal,
enter the property, search and seize
Yeah.
and remove.
No, that they can no longer,
All
if
right.
we make these changes, they can no longer get a warrant to enter the property to search and seize unless it's a dangerous animal.
Right.
So this would then apply only to dangerous. The ability to to essentially seize and destroy an animal would only apply to dangerous animals.
Correct.
If this change is.
And this does not, this ordinance doesn't address like animal welfare issues, which is a whole different
Yes,
thing.
that's true.
So,
So this is Article 8, I guess a D.
8D. That's indeed correct, that's where it is, and of course with our new language, that process would then only apply to a quote dangerous animal, as defined by that. Then it wouldn't apply to all animals. Of course, it's a matter of interest.
I just want to ask about that particular designation. Is that a designation that's done by the animal control officer?
It's done by the definition here.
which is from the state.
An animal which while running at large causes reasonable fear of bodily injury by attacking or threatening to attack a person, domestic pet, domestic animal, or either. Or a dangerous animal is also disease and dangerous to public health, that's usually the rabies situation.
Right, so we're down to the wording of causes reasonable fear of bodily injury.
Yeah, reasonable, it's a very lawyerish term.
Well, you started out saying that you wanted to change wording because right now everything's okay because we have a good animal control officer and we don't have to worry about that sort of thing. But at some point, somebody has to decide what that reasonable fear is in order to put this into use. So at such time as we maybe don't have a great animal control officer anymore, that reasonable fear thing comes up to be decided by somebody who's not.
I think reasonable fear is completely subjective, because every person in this room is gonna have a different opinion of what's reasonable.
But
You may be afraid of something that somebody else is.
And there are guidelines for if you end up with a situation where you have a dangerous animal hearing that comes before the select board that, or.
Is that how it comes up? It's
There's
not.
specific,
I was,
there's a protocol for that.
I was here for the,
Guidance.
I'm sorry, Madam
You're
Chair,
fine.
I apologize for interrupting. Real quick, I was here for the litigation of this on the board. It was, I think we had like 40, 50 people, stand for this. This has more to do with the intent or an animal's actions. So just as an example that was used, if you're walking down the street with a pit bull and that's your pet and she's on a leash or whatever, but people are, because of a reputation like this, are afraid of the pit bull, that does not warrant making me feel uncomfortable, even though you may feel uncomfortable. The animal would have to, yeah, absolutely, the animal would have to conduct itself in a manner that actually created an action that provided the fear.
But
does that make sense?
It makes sense, but when does that come up? I mean, if that person is walking down the street, and feels like they're afraid of that dog, where do they take that fear? And who do they take it to, and who decides whether that was a reasonable fear?
Well, they would take it to the control officer, right? That's the protocol. And then, again, as you said, it's a great point, since we're on it. And while we have a really good person right now, that person then makes, unfortunately, a subjective call. But I was here, and I won't be, but when I was here when we did this, the animal does have to have an action. You can't just not like, a boa constrictor, not like snakes, if the snake is not, on your property or a dog has breached and he's on your property and he's threatening you, that's when we're in that.
Sure, I mean, there's very easy cases and there's more difficult cases, and that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
As we started into this with the idea that, it's easy now because we have a very reasonable person who's wielding the weapon, wielding the definition to decide whether this animal is dangerous or not. And I'm not sure maybe we've addressed part of it.
Well, I just want to keep it quick. Now,
I'm not claiming it's easy to make that decision.
if you got two Dobermans and they're breaching all the time off your property, and they're fairly aggressive, irrespective of they're in the road or whatever, yeah, you're falling under the rubric of this rule. You just are.
Right. I had another question as well, and that had to do with being, running at large, and it talks about being, on the roadway. And it says it's within 25 feet of the center line of the road. I know there are people, here in Westminster whose property is on either side of the road, the road's not 25 feet across. So, you could have your dog on your own property and it's within 25 feet of the center line of the road. Do we need to address that somehow, the wording of that?
I mean, that could be changed to in the road causing a public safety or something like that, or, I don't know.
I agree with you, but I wanted to take the biggest problem out of that, which was the distinction between a fining situation and a seizure situation. You know, where you might fine the owner of the dog versus seize the dog.
I think that's great. I appreciate what you're trying to do.
So that was step one.
Thing to do, but it may not be everything.
Yeah, and then to address your concerns about definition of dangerous, it is, there is a process that has been employed of appealing to the select board. And then it becomes a bit the select board's mutual definition of dangerous. So it's not just the animal control officer, it's also the select board. So this appeals often come to the select board about this. So if there is any unreasonableness on one individual, the animal control officer's side, it is ameliorated a bit by the hopefully somewhat reasonableness of the select board.
Is there any, you know, aside from an obviously dangerous animal, an animal that's bitten somebody or something like that, if there's just been a complaint, there's no taking of an animal before there's a chance to appeal that kind of thing.
That's correct.
There's a process, yeah.
Yeah.
So if the animal control officer gets a complaint from somebody, nobody's been injured,
I believe that it's currently written that she contacts owner, she can fine 5 times, and then she seizes the animal.
Although
Or something like
that's
that.
not
Is it 5
how
times?
that's not actually how this ordinance mentions it at all. It says the animal control officer has the power. It defines violations, it defines enforcement. It'll be handled by an animal control officer in a case-by-case knowledge with knowledge of the select board. So its current language only specifies that the select board have to have knowledge of the actions of the animal control officer. Doesn't say that they have to come here first, but it does give the animal control officer instructions as following steps. Remember, step 1.
Step 5.
Issue a verbal warning.
Sorry.
Okay. Step 2, serve owner with a written notice, providing reasonable time limit for satisfactory correction. The offender shall, within the period of time stated, permanently cease and correct all violations. Any person who continues any violations beyond the time limit stated shall be issued a municipal complaint with the acknowledgement of the select board. Step 3, refer the owner to the select board for advice on the proper measures to be taken to avoid violations of the ordinance. Step 4, require the domestic pet or domestic animal be restrained by a reliable leash. Step 5, issue a municipal complaint for state statutes with acknowledgement of the select board. And 6, confine or impound a domestic pet, domestic animal or wolf hybrid to ensure public safety. So that process is what certainly our current animal control officer is using to bring concerns before the select board. So they brought to the select board. So it seems that from our point of view that we do get complaints brought before us.
That, with me, I hope that it did. I hope that she followed the procedure of this with other people. With me, she did not. With me, I paid $350 in fines. I had 4 tickets. Before she writes me a ticket, she is supposed to come in front of the select board. The select board, to my knowledge, really didn't have any idea what was going on with her until I came and said, like, this went on for 2 years. And she did not follow what her procedures that she was supposed to do in here, but yet I was to follow mine and then was threatened to come and seize my dog. So I guess I'm gonna say, that's great to have an animal control officer, but they also need to go with the procedure and not go rogue, which in my experience, she went rogue and did what she wanted to do. She did not follow the procedure. So that's really an issue that we're gonna pay her, and she's got this amount of time. I forgot what her hours are, but I was gonna say, my experience with her was not good. I felt that she was unprofessional and she did exactly what she wanted to do.
But
She
what
was
we're
rogue.
dealing with here is whether we find the language of our ordinance satisfactory or not. Maybe there are indeed comments about the animal control officer, but what we're trying to do is get our language a bit better. It does seem like there's some text in there which helps, which seems to imply that it's not all up to the animal control officer. It is referred to the select board in several cases under, at least by statute, at least by our ordinance. So ordinance looks okay in addressing that concern, even if reality doesn't always seem to have done so.
I agree.
Is there some place to go to, I'm not familiar with your case, I don't know anything about it, really. But is there some place where a person who owns an animal that's in question for behavior or whatever, if they're not satisfied with what the animal control officer, or how the animal control officer is handling it, is there some place for them to go and someplace?
To the select board.
This is the place to come?
Yeah, as Tammy, as you did. And it helped generate some of our look back at the ordinance.
And the other question is, so, like, I paid my fines, okay? But what does Westminster get from those fines? Do you get half of that money? Do you get the money? If I'm being fined as a resident, right, and I'm gonna pay my fine, okay? Because I'm gonna try to abide by this. What do we get from it? So if the sheriff, who we're already paying, is getting money and it's just going to the state of Vermont, what's the benefit for the town of Westminster to get fines? To fine anyone for their dog or their cow or their domestic animal, able to get a ticket, where's that money going? And why are we,
I'm not sure on the animal control.
why are we doing tickets if Westminster, why do we want to give the state of Vermont money for something that's going on in our town? That if I'm gonna get a ticket, I would just assume it goes to the town that I live in.
I'm not sure on that. I know about speeding tickets, but I don't know about.
I've never seen anything come in earmarked for dog
Right.
violation or any animal violation at all.
So, I mean,
It would seem
But
that the sheriff's department should, since these are our fines, our ordinance.
Well, there is revenue, when the revenue does come in, it just doesn't say that
Well,
so much
So,
was.
yeah, you don't know whether it was a speeding ticket or a dog ticket.
Exactly.
So it's possible that money's already
It
coming
is
our way.
possible, it just didn't.
And what is the percentage? Do we get like 2% of it, 3% of it?
I don't even know how they do the speeding tickets, Tammy.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna pay them to do the job, it would be nice if we some of the, half the fine.
Right.
I thought if it was your ordinance, you got it all.
I would think so
I mean,
too.
you should.
think
I'm just
so.
saying, if I'm gonna pay the money, I
I don't
have to go to my town.
It seems
They're-
like it's our.
They're already getting paid to go serve the.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but we're at that point, they're working for you, and it's
Yeah.
their ordinance. Route 5, they stop somebody at the state speed limit, School Street, whatever, that's different. But this is
She's on the
Sorry,
clock.
I think of a parking ticket on Corey Road. You know, if there's a no parking ordinance on Corey Road, then you would get the, I think you would get the money.
Just not very likely. Just not very likely.
Yeah, right.
Especially when there's no parking ordinance there.
Right.
No, well.
I know what you're saying.
It should have been
Four.
four, that's the only one you've got, really, it's legal, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. VLCT has a dog, it's Larry or VLCT or both.
Well, maybe it would make sense to have him, if we're gonna send this, the amendment to him anyway, have Larry look this over.
Because he did this probably anyway, I'm assuming.
We're assuming, I don't recall.
It looks like copies from boilerplate.
Which could be built, this could be VLCT.
Yeah, and.
I think that was made downstairs of this building.
All right.
We should ask him, I don't recall.
Review it, make suggestions as necessary, we're gonna pay him for his time anyway, so.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
All right. Anything else on the dog ordinance?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
patience.
Road foreman's report, that's the next thing, right?
Yeah, that is.
Okay.
Good job, grading the road so quick.
All right.
I don't think he had a choice.
That was fast.
No, we really wasn't too bad a shape. We'd gone out before, guys had gone out in the back, both quarters, and worked on cutouts as we discussed last time, and cleaning out culverts and all that, anticipating that we were gonna have some good storms, which we did have, and now we're back at it, doing it again, because that's what we do. Ongoing road maintenance is why we all have a job. So that's going good. We made it to the Westminster Community Hall. We got the oil transferred to the town garage. I felt like that was more urgent than the repairs right now. I will get to it. I've just been busy with this other stuff, but we will take care of it. We just purchased a new hot box.
Oh, Chuck had asked if, sorry, I totally cut you off, but Chuck had asked, next week, the holiday falls on Tuesday. And, you know, they work Monday through Thursday work week and have Fridays off. The guys asked if they could take the Monday off in exchange for working Friday.
I'm good with that.
I think the office is closed anyway, right? Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
This office is closed what, Monday?
Monday and Tuesday.
And Tuesday, you're not working Tuesday, right?
No, Tuesday's the actual holiday.
Right, I understand.
So it just made more sense, you know, you have them come in Monday.
Perfectly fine with me.
If there's an event, then we'll be here. But it would just be, yeah, it just makes more sense for all kinds of reasons, but yeah.
Perfectly fine with that?
Cool, thank you.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, they're gonna start, like I said, tentatively speaking, they're supposed to start milling tomorrow in Gageville. They're supposed to finish the catch basins that are getting replaced out there, the brick ones that were falling apart. Once that is done, a lot of that is clay tile. It appears to be in good shape. I want to get best septic to camera it, so we have a good idea on what we really got for our under drain, our storm drain system, what kind of shape it's really in. What we put in was the plastic, the SDR catch basins. You familiar with them? Anybody? No, they're plastic. And you're able to just drill a hole wherever you need it. You know, you got a pipe coming in, a pipe coming out. If you order like concrete, then you have to have it engineered to be precise. So it fits the hole, whatever. These are, you can do them on site, a little less time consuming, better. They should last a lot longer because salt's not gonna deteriorate in on. So that's where we're at anyway. And I would really like to look at next year, hopefully they're gonna work on a bridge. They'll be closed, when the bridge is closed, paved from the bridge back to Bellows Falls. And all these structures will be done. And ideally, if we do have to do any storm drain work, the pipe end of it that's when we would address it, before they pave it. So that we're not, again, digging up.
How far does our, the town line and the road going to Bells Falls?
You know what the tomb is?
Yes,
Right there.
right there. So there's a good bit of it down to Red Light Hill that is Rockingham.
Red Light Hill is all Rockingham.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the town line cuts right across that basement farm, right across that field, kitty corner, catches Westminster Terrace, and goes down over and catches James Terminal.
Yeah.
No, I did, that's what you said, it runs right up that grass bank towards the cemetery, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, that's, basically all I got, same old stuff. Storm.
Okay. All right. Executive session?
Make a motion that we go into executive session after other business for, personnel contractual matter.
So seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session after other business
And invite the interim manager.
and invite the interim town manager. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is it?
Well, that was something that came in today. It's
It's nothing
for
but
info,
tonight?
nothing for tonight.
Okay.
Just, boards, committees, and commissions. Other
So
business?
Yeah, I'll just really quick. You've seen the first two of the new ARPA proposal scoring system. Hopefully this has helped you as the board to look at it, understand how we got to that score. It's not a thumbs up or thumbs down, because the decision rests with you. But we hope it helped you, but morally, we're answering the public's concerns from previous months since the inception, and we were accused of mamby-pamby decisions and favoritism and lots of things, so it's working as well for the committee as I hope it works for the select board.
I like the way that it's a uniform application for everybody. You know, you put your information in there, but it's not handwritten and some are typed and like it's easy to follow.
Yeah, you're to be commended. This is clear, concise, and coherent, and easy for all of us to understand and get the basic. You did a great job, and you're doing a great job. And all I can say is thank you very much for all you guys, your leadership, and everyone's efforts.
Other than people behind me, but so
This is excellent. These are excellent.
good, but we're
Thank you, Paul.
Other business? All right. Date of next meeting, Wednesday, July 12th.
I may or may not be here. I'll have a vacation that week. Somewhere in the first half of July, I don't know.
You're still here.
I'll let you know.
Millie, thank you again for everything.
Absolutely welcome. Long meeting.
Sorry, Millie.
Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
If it's one thing Mr. Stearns can do, it's make a long meeting.
Yeah.
I said that,
Yeah.
didn't I?
Yeah.
It's good information, it's just a lot of it.
It should have been broken up between
It
two meetings.
should have.
It had to be done.
It had to be
that
done.
was brutal.
But,
Are we adjourned? Executive session?
Yeah.
Thank you, Millie.
Recording stopped.
thanks, Millie. Sorry about excess noise.
I'll take the blame for that. So these mean nothing, these are just for us to look over.
Yeah, so Sheriff Anderson was on